Really, history is made here today, and I really want to remind you, this decade till 2030 is the decisive decade if we really want to avoid the worst consequences of catastrophic climate change. Till 2030, and I think Hans-Josef Fell has pointed it out in his statements yesterday, this is the time where we have to act decisively. We are on a good way, and I will emphasize this, but we are still too slow. We have to speed up. So my topic is really what kind of technologies do we have to enter the multi-terawatt range? And I want to first show you that we are on a very good track. Today, 80% of all investments in new energy devices, plants, and so on, are going into the renewables field. As you see on this graph, the gray scale bar has decreased year by year, and just in the last years, we have a very further incredible acceleration. And more than 80% in renewables. And of course, it is very important. We have both solar and wind, and we have all other sources of renewable power. But at the end of the day, what wins out is solar, because the sun shines everywhere and is not dependent on critical conditions as wind energy, as geothermal energy, hydro energy, and so far. And what is just incredible is that in the last decade, since 1990, we had a cumulative annual growth rate of 37%. I think there is not much in technology history which has shown over so long time such an incredible breakneck speed that even in the last couple of years alone, it is still 25% annual growth rate. I like to show you, and you have seen this picture probably already from me in the past. This is from 2014. International Energy Agency in 2014 predicted that by 2050 we might have 5 terawatts of installed power. And I think it is not surprising that we are much faster than this. But what is very important to note, we are still at the very, very beginning of the solar time. We have now installed about 1.5 terawatts, but predictions that I will show you some data later say we need 75 terawatts. So worldwide, we have installed the first 1.5 of 70 terawatts. The best is still to come, the best business opportunities, the best growth rate, creation of jobs, and so forth. And of course, what is all driving this is the price learning curve, which came down enormously, amidst 2 decades of price reduction. And of course, it is always important to point out the horizontal axis on this graph is not time. We don't get this price reduction by simply waiting, doing more research. We got the price reduction by establishing a huge multi-gigawatt scale industry. And I don't have to emphasize that there has been in the history a very good collaboration, not intentionally, not contract collaboration between Germany, which created the market with the feed-in tariff, and China, which recognized that we need to build up the industry to provide it. On the other hand, Europe again delivered the machinery. So it was really a very, very fortunate wheel of success. We came down from $100 per watt to less than $20 per watt today, 24% price reduction for each doubling of the globally installed capacity. And now when we go to sun-rich areas of the world, we can offer electricity at close to 1 cent per kilowatt hour. And this, of course, changes the game in so many predictions, projections, and so forth. The only problem is the old fossil industry doesn't like us anymore. When solar energy was not important, all the oil companies had their solar branches. But as soon as solar energy became interesting and started to be a threat to the old fossil industry, then suddenly Shell Solar, Mobil Solar, Exxon Solar, all of them were phased out because, of course, the oil companies noticed there is competition, and they hope for each year of delay of the introduction of renewable energy, they can bring home billions of dollars of profit. So we need to be aware of that, but I think it is a lost cause for them, but it means we have to make an effort to be as quickly as possible. Of course, as we all know, we have a very interesting and not very good situation in terms of PV module production by region. As you see, Asia and especially China and Chinese-led companies are dominant. We are incredibly grateful for the government of China and for all the companies in China to push forward this development. But still, I think it is very good looking forward to have a more diverse production base. And of course, 0.5 terawatt newly installed in 2023 is an enormous sign of success. This shows on a relative scale what happened. Here you see very drastically that around 2007, 2008, there was a change in policies, especially in Germany, and suddenly European PV production broke down completely. As well, it had to do, of course, with the drastic price reduction, and then we entered where we are today. And especially dramatic is the situation in solar cells. What I showed you before were solar modules. In solar cells, we have only 0.4% left over in Europe, 0.3% in the United States of the total world market. Tiny Vietnam alone produces 1.1% of the world's solar cells, so more than the whole of Europe and the whole of the United States combined. It's not a very good development. We should really work to broaden the base. And of course, here again on the absolute scale, exactly the same picture as we had discussed it. These are the installations, and we see that the installations, fortunately as well, very heavy emphasis in China, but of course there the rest of the world is catching up because of course we need solar energy worldwide and everywhere. Let's have a quick look at technologies. You see on this chart, which is as well from my former institute, Fraunhofer ISE, that there have been dramatic changes in the past. If we go back 30 years, we see that thin-film PV modules were about 1/3 of the world market. And I still remember, Martin, when you gave your talks and said this is the second generation of solar cells and it will replace the first generation. And actually, if you look at this curve, it really looked like this, you know, but then things changed. The crystalline silicon suddenly became so inexpensive that they pushed the thin-film PV market out, and today we are at less than 5% of the world market. Similarly, the dark blue area here is a so-called multicrystalline, the cast silicon market. For many, many years this appeared to be the future because cast silicon is cheaper to produce than single crystal silicon. But in the last 5 years or so, we realized that most important is cell efficiency, because cell efficiency is the most important factor for the total cost of the system. If you can improve cell efficiency by 1%, this really makes a big difference in the total calculation. So today we really want to have cells which have efficiencies 24, 25, 26%, and the corresponding module efficiencies. And therefore you see that now monocrystalline silicon solar cells and modules are more than 95% of the world market. Very quickly, technology. I guess most of you, of course, are very well aware. We have now the third generation of technologies. The first generation of crystalline silicon PV technology was called the aluminum back surface field. The very simple structure is shown here. The lateral coating of the backside with aluminum provided a very easy and cheap backside contact. However, it created as well an aerial metal semiconductor contact, which gives rise to minority carrier recombination. Therefore, efficiency was limited to about 20%. PERC was the advantage. In PERC technology, as it is shown here, you replace the aerial contact by a passivating layer, but in order to contact the solar cell, we use a laser. A laser can shoot 1,000 contact points within 1 second, and then you can increase the efficiency by 24%. However, you still have metal semiconductor contacts, so we want to improve further, and the next third generation solar cells are the passivating contact cells. The TOPCon structure really is a very, for physicists, interesting structure. We make the passivating layer so thin that the carriers can tunnel through it. And then you have both passivation and contact in one step, and this is the so-called TOPCon technology. Alternatively, we go a completely different technology route. We use experience from silicon thin film, from amorphous silicon technology, and we use this in the heterojunction solar cells, where we simply place P-type and N-type amorphous layers on both sides of usually an N-type wafer, and then we have a very simple, highly efficient solar cells, and the world record right now is as well established with these heterojunction cells. So these cells I call the third generation of crystalline silicon cells, but we don't want to stop there. We want to go beyond the glass ceiling. Martin Green will tell us in his talk something about this, so I can be very brief, but the point is you need to combine more than one semiconductor material, because the theoretical limit for the most optimum single material is of the order 31% efficiency. And one opportunity is, for instance, to use wideband perovskites on top. These type of cells are in development right now, and I'm sure you have all heard about the Longi announcement of 33.9% of a two-terminal perovskite on silicon cell. This cell is still a small cell, and there are still issues with the reliability, stability, the degradation issues. So it is not yet ready for the market, but it is of course a very exciting development. Perovskite could be the top cell. It could be as well 3,5 gallium arsenide if we could develop inexpensive deposition technologies. So where we are heading? In 2016, I convened the first terawatt scale workshop in Freiburg. And if you look carefully, you can see Martin Green and many other friends who are sitting here in the audience in this picture, which was taken in 2016 in Freiburg. And if you look very carefully at our most optimistic scenario, and you must imagine this is not a scenario from the International Energy Agency, this is a scenario from PV specialists. And our most optimistic scenario is just a little bit below where we are today. So today, with our terawatt and 1.5 terawatt installation, we are just above our most optimistic estimation from there. And of course, we already predicted that in 2030 we will have between 4 and 8 terawatt installed, and the corresponding production. And of course, this was then predicted further in the second terawatt workshop in 2019, and in our last third terawatt workshop in 2022, we dared to predict that we will have in 2030 more than 1 terawatt per year production. I must say today, this looks again like a very conservative estimate, because we are now already at 0.5 terawatt production, and we have production capacity already approaching this first terawatt. Probably in 2030 we are above 1 terawatt per year. And most important, this is a number I would like you to take home. Something like 60, 70 terawatt is what the world needs in order to convert towards a near 100% renewable energy scenario. And of course, one slide of advertisement. We are working hard on establishing PV production in Europe, and I am personally involved in the effort of MCPV, which will produce heterojunction PV in the Netherlands. Let me conclude. PV has become the lowest cost way to produce electricity. This is a very important message for our politicians, and we expect that the current rapid market growth will continue, and the goal will be 75 terawatt. Around 2030, when the market of PV exceeds a terawatt per year, we will exceed the $1,000 billion per year market. And this means the PV market will be larger than the automotive market. This is something politicians around the world have not yet in their mind, that what we are talking here has the same value or will be more important than the famous automotive market. It will be still silicon-based PV technologies, although we can say we have still lots of innovations, further developments, further research to be done, including, of course, the way towards the fourth generation tandem cells. many novel materials and nanostructures or novel tandem structures with silicon group 3,5, group 2,6, or perovskite silicon are in development. And of course, the competition in PV manufacturing is fierce. We all are aware of this. But what I like to try to do in Europe is to convince companies who buy PV modules to at least honor a small domestic production portfolio, so that they promise to buy 5% in 2026, 10% in 2027 of domestically produced modules in order to help build up a competitive industry, because we really need to have a broad industrial base worldwide. And finally, and this is very important to discuss in the public discussions, in an energy system which is dominated by sun and wind, there is no more place for baseload power. In Germany, we have already about 1,000 hours a year where sun and wind and all the renewables provide 100% of the electricity needed. So the few remaining so-called baseload power plants result in the phenomenon of negative electricity prices, because these thermal power plants, they cannot be stopped. The vessel would explode. So they have to keep producing, although nobody needs the electricity. So this electricity is sold at negative prices. Anybody who takes these kilowatt hours, terawatt hours, gets the premium for this. So I think very important, we don't have place for baseload power. And if nuclear power plants and similar ideas create baseload power, no place in the future energy system. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Prof. Weber, for this interesting talk and the great overview. We have time. Do we have a question?
Old story about a CO2 budget, which we still have and which we still can use up, is wrong. We don't have any more CO2 budget to spend. And what we have to do is any CO2 which we are blowing into the atmosphere right now in the next couple of years, we have to find ways to get it out again. And this getting it out is much, much more expensive than rapid introduction of renewables and quickly reducing the annual emissions, So we don't have any more CO2 budget. The world is at the 1.5 degrees corner. And I can only say one thing. What we experience in weather phenomena today, we in Germany experienced flooding, which has never happened like this before. In other parts of the world, we have heavy storms. This is just the beginning of catastrophic weather events, which will get more and more frequent in the future. And I must say, most of us here with white hair, we will still have 10, 20 years to live very pleasant on this planet. But who is 20 years today? It's a different story. These young people who want to live 60 years, they go on the street, they glue themselves to the street to block the traffic, they make crazy things. In Berlin is a guy who wants to stop eating. He has stopped eating for 80 days and he wants to do it till his death. If not, Chancellor Scholz makes a certain statement about the climate. These are the desperate things people are doing. So indeed, it's very urgent.
Professor Webb, thank you very much for the presentation. I think you talk about like 75 terawatt for
Yes.
2050,
Yes.
right? Solar PV.
Yes.
So what that mean? That means all the electricity provided by the solar?
No. It would be about 60-70% by solar, and then it's a mix of wind and all the other renewables. But it would be 100% renewable energy scenario. Interesting enough, the most recent Shell study, and Shell is not in suspicion to be too pro-solar, says you need 66 terawatt. So whether 60 or 70, I would not put my hands in the fire, but this is the order of magnitude.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's thank Prof. Weber again for this great outlook and also for reminding us we have to work faster. Thank you.